Narcissists do not gaslight, and narcissists do not future fake. It's a common mistake online. To gaslight, you need to be able to tell the difference between fantasy and reality. What you're doing is you're playing with someone else's mind. You're distorting their perception of reality in order to manipulate them and obtain some goal. But to do this, you, the gaslighter, need to realize the difference between the lies you're telling and what is real. Narcissists are incapable of this. When they tell you a told story, a told tale, when they lie to you, when they believe it, they really believe it. When they make you a promise, they are convinced beyond doubt that they will change. They take it seriously. They are invested in it. They never keep their promises, and nothing does change.
All right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever it is that you're tuning in from. And I think we'll both introduce ourselves, but I've got Sam Vaknin here. I'm Rebecca Zung. I am an attorney. I've been a trial attorney for 25 years now, and I'm a USA Today bestselling author of a couple of different books, including Negotiate Like You Matter and Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. And I've got Sam Vaknin here. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me. And you survived the first interview. I hope you, I hope you survived the
Hey, our
second.
interview did very, very well, I think, on
Yes,
both of our
I saw.
channels.
It
So,
did surprisingly well. I agree.
yes.
Um, I'm a, I'm a professor of clinical psychology. I'm the author of Malignancy of Love, Narcissism Revisited. I've been studying personality disorders, especially cluster B personality disorders, and especially narcissistic personality disorder over the last 28 years. So that's all I've been doing. And I'm here to talk to you about this condition and what it means to the narcissist and to others.
Yeah, I think our conversation on both of our channels does very, very well. So I think it's important work to help people. I help people with communicating and negotiating with high conflict personalities so that they can break free from toxic personalities. I give people tools so that they can navigate them in a way that uh, helps them break free. And my question to you today um, is, are narcissists born or are they made? Is it the old nature or nurture conversation?
Yes, that's the old debate. Yeah. First of all, we should distinguish between evidence and, well, I don't need to tell you, between evidence and what stands to reason. Many things stand to reason, but there's no evidence. So it stands to reason that narcissism has a genetic component. Stands to reason that pathological narcissism is hereditary. And I'll give you two reasons why. Number one, we have twin studies of twins, where one of them became a narcissist and the other didn't. And we have multiple studies of siblings who were basically raised by the same parents in the same environment and more or less in the same time period. Like the difference in ages was not that big. And yet only 1 of 10 and fewer than one in 10 became a narcissist. So that's one very strong argument to believe that narcissism is genetic or hereditary. And the second reason to believe that is that narcissism is pathological narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, is a member of a cluster of personality disorders, including borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and so on, histrionic. And in borderline personality disorder, in any psychopathy, there is a very strong genetic component, a very strong hereditary component. So if narcissism belongs to the same family, so to speak, it would stand to reason that it too has a genetic component. Yet we have yet to prove this. We have multiple studies and there are speculations about specific genes or gene arrays, groups of genes, but we don't have evidence. Nothing that will stand in court, to use your domain. We do not have evidence that narcissism is genetic or hereditary, though it's extremely likely. Similarly, it stands to reason that pathological narcissism should be associated with brain abnormalities. It stands to reason. The narcissist, usually in the background of the narcissist, we find childhood adversity, we find trauma, we find abuse. We know that trauma and abuse change the brain, rewire the brain, imprint themselves on the brain. We know that. That's a fact. That has been established in scientific studies. And we know that these are usually lifelong impacts unless they are reversed in therapy and so on, where neuroplasticity kicks in and the brain rewires or reprograms itself. But narcissists rarely attend therapy.
Right.
And they're very immune to outside influences, generally speaking, not only therapy. They're immersed in their own island of fantasy. They're not in contact with reality. They've impaired reality testing. So the neuroplasticity of the narcissist's brain is unlikely to be of help because simply the narcissist is isolated from the external world. So it stands to reason that the narcissist's brain is somehow different because the narcissist has experienced abuse and trauma in early childhood when the brain actually is molded and is growing and so on. It also stands to reason that if narcissism is indeed partially genetic and hereditary, this would have an implication or manifestation in the brain. So again, it stands to reason, but we don't have any evidence of this. We have a few, not many, studies. They're not serious. There's no control group. They usually involve 10 to 12 subjects. They don't isolate what we call confounding factors. They don't isolate other factors which may have led to the same outcomes. For example, the abuse itself. So these are not serious studies. While it stands to reason that narcissism involves brain abnormalities, hitherto we were unable to prove this. There's another problem here. How do we know if the brain abnormalities cause the narcissism? Or maybe a lifelong of narcissism changes the brain. We do not test the brains of newborns and infants. We don't do this. This is considered to some extent unethical. And we simply don't do this. We test and we examine and we measure the brains of adults. And yet adult narcissists are by definition narcissists. How do we know whether their narcissism has not altered, changed, modified their brains, or whether the brains were like that to start with? We don't know. That's the answer.
Right.
So it's very unserious on the part of people with and without academic degrees to go around making sweeping claims about narcissism is genetic, it has nothing to do with the environment, and narcissism is a brain abnormality, exactly like psychopathy. It's very not serious. And this claim should be discounted immediately because there's no scientific substantiation of this. We do not teach this in universities where I teach. You can't find it in textbooks, encyclopedias. It's not serious. Well, I'm not talking about Wikipedia. Yeah? It's not serious. Now, what will happen in 10, 20 years? I am pretty convinced that we will succeed to find a genetic hereditary link or antecedent, and we will succeed to prove that brain abnormalities and structural and functional are involved in narcissism. I think in 20 years, this will be, true, but not right now.
Have you ever met somebody, they started off to be the most charming, charismatic person you've ever met in your life. Then they turned out to be your worst nightmare. And then when you go to negotiate with them, they're a living hell. Well, I developed something called the SLAY method of negotiating with narcissists, and it has helped tens of thousands of people in more than 150 countries win, go from feeling drained and defeated to getting the outcomes they want. And the reason why it works is because I spent more than 20 years studying narcissism as a trial attorney, and now I'm here to help you win too, and also take your suffering and turn it into your superpower. Take your pain and turn it into profit, peace, and purpose as a highly specialized high conflict negotiation coach. If you want to learn how to do it, then just go to RebeccaZung.com/apply and I will show you how. You've been studying this, you said, almost 30 years. Now, I have seen studies that have said that there have been almost an increase in more than 30% since the 70s in NPD. Have you seen that?
Yes, yes, that part is true. Not only has there been an increase in the general population of the incidence and prevalence of narcissistic personality disorder, but there has been an explosion of narcissistic personality disorder among people under the age of 25. Starting with the studies of Twenge and Campbell in 2008, 2012, 4 years. Starting with these studies, we now know for sure that narcissism is exploding among certain demographics. Ironically, under age 25 and above age 65. Narcissism is exploding in these age groups. And we know that NPD is now diagnosed more frequently than in the 80s. But this has to do, again, with extraneous factors. For example, the definition of narcissistic personality disorder has changed since 2013. In 2013, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual introduced what we call an alternative model. The alternative model is far more expansive than the list of diagnostic criteria in the 4th edition of the DSM. So the 5th edition and the text revision in 2022, their way of describing narcissism is such that it captures many more people. It applies to many more people. That's one thing. Second thing, the most important diagnostic manual, which is the International Classification of Diseases, has published the 11th edition in 2022. And in the 11th edition of the ICD, by the way, for you to understand, the ICD is used by 80% of humanity, and the DSM is used by fewer than 20% of humanity. So the ICD is by far much more important. So in the ICD, narcissistic personality disorder has been eliminated. There's no such diagnosis. Instead, what we have in the ICD, we have a list of traits. And if an individual, a patient, a client, meets a few of these, has a few of these traits, in conjunction, in combination, this would amount to the equivalent of what we call narcissistic personality disorder in North America. So dissociality, anankasia, which is a form of obsessive compulsive disorder, and so on. If you put these together, antagonism, if you put these together, you get the kind of person that we call a narcissist in North America. But make no mistake about it, the vast majority of humanity do not recognize narcissistic personality disorder as a mental health issue at all. It's been eliminated. And instead, what we have, we recognize in the ICD that there is a personality disorder, a problem with personality. And then whenever the patient comes to a therapist, the therapist creates a tailor-made, customized profile of the patient using, like Lego, using various traits put together. So this categorical approach, you have narcissistic personality, this is very antiquated. It's like 20, 25 years old. We don't do this anymore. The DSM was forced to do it. They didn't want to do it as well, but they were forced to do it because they're financed by the insurance and pharmaceutical companies, industries in the United States. This is a totally commercial decision. The insurance companies insist on classification and categorization in order to reimburse therapists and psychologists. While in Europe, it's all free. It's a public service, so there's no need for this. So that's
So
the
are you
situation.
saying that there are actually more people, or is it because it's an expanded definition?
I think two things. People have become much more aware of narcissistic personality disorders. So, for example, spouses are pushing their spouses to attend therapy. In other words, this increased awareness has pushed many more, has introduced many more people into clinical practice. Courts, for example, now evaluate for narcissistic personality disorder, which didn't used to be the case until 15, 20 years ago. In the
Right.
United Kingdom, at least, I know that courts
Well, I
routinely,
mean, I would say in courts, it really only became a term, I mean, less than 10 years ago. Uh,
yes, in the
you know,
States, there. In the
yeah.
United Kingdom, it is ironic, strangely, it started earlier. There was a famous case of a guy who killed his parents, and then the defense used narcissistic personality disorder as a mitigating factor. Initially, they tried to claim insanity defense. It was thrown out. Then they used it as a mitigating, and his sentence was reduced. So
So,
it became all the rage.
but I go back to my question. Are there more narcissists or is there just more awareness
No,
of it?
I don't think there are more narcissists. I think what's happening is more awareness and a more expansive definition. But I do think that among young people, there is more narcissistic style. Not necessarily narcissistic personality disorder, but there's a growing narcissistic style. It's becoming de rigueur. It's becoming fashionable to be narcissistic in many ways.
And do you
So
equate, do you say that that is because of social media, because of,
I think social media reflected, I think social media caters to these needs
mhm,
because Twenge and Campbell started to discern this trend in 2008 when there was no social media.
mhm,
So their first studies where they found an explosion, literally explosion of
because of the
narcissism
cell
among young people
phone?
preceded social media. So I think social media catered to this need, like narcissists wanted social media, so it
Right,
came about. Yeah,
right.
but but yeah, I think of course the environment is very encouraging. Not only social media. Listen, narcissists are in politics. They're doing very well. We
Hmm.
could say that narcissism is a positive adaptation in the sense that if you're a narcissist, your chances to succeed, to make it work, to are higher now. Our civilization rewards narcissistic traits and behaviors.
Hmm.
And if you're not a narcissist, you're a loser. If you're a winner, you at the same time must be obnoxious and disempathic because winners are like that. There is this confluence, there is this combination of winning traits and narcissistic traits. It's as if the current ethos is to be a winner, you need to be a narcissist. It goes without saying. Like if you're not a narcissist, you'll never make it. Forget about it. You'll be a loser. And so people adapt. Now we call it positive adaptation. In 2016, in July, the famous scientific magazine, scientific mind you, New Scientist, they had a cover story. The cover story was parents, teach your children to be narcissists. There was a cover story, July 2016. And what they were claiming at the time is that narcissism is fast becoming a positive thing. And there are even academics like Ken Dutton and many others who claim, Macoby and many others, they claim that narcissism is a positive thing, is a great step in evolution, in that we should be led by narcissists and psychopaths because they're much better adapted, much better suited for leadership roles. And there are many studies that demonstrate that the prevalence of how many narcissists, so the prevalence of narcissism and psychopathy among, for example, surgeons is much higher than the general population. Many more surgeons are psychopaths. Surgeons, I mean
It's
doctors.
almost like Darwinism, like survival of the fittest.
It's, well, if a surgeon
It's
has to
almost like
cut,
if you're gonna survive,
yeah,
to be a like Darwinism, right?
yes, it's adaptation. Adaptation is a Darwinian concept. Adaptation means that the environment has changed in a way that narcissists and psychopaths are much better suited, much better adapted to modern civilization. But there are studies that show this. For example, Hare and Babiak, the world's leading experts on psychopathy, they discovered that 5% of chief executive officers of Fortune 500 companies can be diagnosed as psychopaths, compared to 1% in the general population. Studies by Bond, recent studies by Bond, found that 20% of chief executive officers in all corporations, small and big, have pronounced psychopathic tendencies and are possibly, potentially, psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
We discovered that among medical surgeons, people who operate in operating rooms, in hospitals, there is between 5 and 10 times more psychopaths than in the general population.
Mm-hmm.
We know that.
I used to represent them in their divorces.
Yeah.
or their wives.
Yeah, and you concur? You would agree?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So now you have this.
So what's people to do?
So people adapt. They become narcissists and psychopaths.
Well,
they adopt narcissistic style and psychopathic
style. Who aren't, how do they deal with them? So can a narcissist change? Do they know what they're doing?
These are two separate questions. Start with the second one because it's easier. Yes, narcissists absolutely know what they're doing. Any claim to the contrary is counterfactual. They know what they're doing. However, they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They are blind to their own motivations and attitudes. So we have a backroom blindness. They do something, they know exactly what they're doing. They also know the impacts their actions would have on other people. When they harm other people, they know it. They don't care, but they know it. But when you ask them, why did you do what you've just done? Then they would spin a narrative which would be self-justifying, self-aggrandizing, fantastic, inflated, grandiose, or inane, out of this world. And these narratives are counterfactual. There's nothing to do with reality. And they really believe in these fantasies. Like they're emotionally invested in these idiotic narratives. And they would fight you tooth and nail if you try to contradict them, to introduce countervailing evidence. They would defend it to the death. They would confabulate. They would invent some fictitious story. Then they would adopt it. They would come to believe it. They would claim it's reality, it's factual, this is real history, and they would fight you. They would ignore all evidence.
They double down on their story.
Yes. And so narcissism is a bizarre combination of extreme self-awareness, actually, because narcissists have cold empathy. They're not only aware of themselves, they're fully aware of other people. They immediately scan other people. They find the vulnerabilities and they invade or penetrate through these vulnerabilities. So narcissists and psychopaths are actually more aware than normal people, than healthy people, because they're predators. They're scanning for prey all the time. Mm-hmm. So we have this on the one hand, and on the other hand, a total lack of self-awareness regarding motivations, regarding your psychology, regarding your total lack. And where a self-awareness introspection should have been, instead, you have fantastic stories and crazy narratives that they believe in. So we have this bizarre combination of total self-awareness and total lack of self-awareness. And this creates a lot of confusion in people, because they say he's aware. No, he's not aware. No, he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, he does know what he's doing. He's evil. He's not evil. No, it creates a big mess. But if you understand that the narcissist is immured and immersed in a fantasy, believes that the fantasy is reality, and acts out of the fantasy in order to justify and buttress the fantasy, then you would understand the narcissist. He knows what he's doing, but he thinks the reasons for his actions have to do with the fantasy. not with any reality. So we have this in many other mental health conditions. We have people who claim that some celebrity is in love with them. This is called an erotomaniac delusion.
Hmm.
So you have delusional people who claim that some celebrity is in love with them.
So
They are,
can I expand on that a little bit? So like
yeah.
for example, in a relationship, when a narcissist is you know how they do this push-pull thing. So they get you all the way to the brink where a person just cannot take anymore and they want to leave, right? And then they make promises of whatever it is. I'll go to marriage counseling. I will do all the things that they know that they've wanted them to do anyway. So they make the promises. In that moment, do they believe that they're going to do those things?
Excellent question. Narcissists do not gaslight, and narcissists do not future fake. It's a common mistake online. To gaslight, you need to be able to tell the difference between fantasy and reality. What you're doing is you're playing with someone else's mind. You're distorting their perception of reality in order to manipulate them and obtain some goal. But to do this, you, the gaslighter, need to realize the difference between the lies you're telling and what is real. Narcissists are incapable of this. When they tell you a told story, a told tale, when they lie to you, when they believe it. They really believe it. When they make you a promise, they are convinced beyond doubt that they will change and they take it seriously, they're invested in it. They never keep their promises and nothing does change.
Right.
And they do, and you end up being gaslit. You do experience gaslighting, but the narcissist is not gaslighting you.
Because they
He
keep you
just,
alive on that hope. They string you along on that hope.
yes, yes, but they believe it. They believe what they tell you. They believe, yes, I'm going to change. Yes, it's going to be better. Yes, let's try again.
So
Let's,
what's going on in their mind in that moment?
they're delusional. They're sick. They're mentally ill. The psychopath is a lot less mentally ill than the narcissist because the psychopath is grounded in reality, knows exactly what he's doing, is goal-oriented. Psychopath just wants what you want. You want money, he wants money. You want sex, he wants sex. The only difference between you is that the psychopath has no scruples, has no conscience, has no remorse, no regret, and no inhibitions. So you want money, you will go about obtaining money legally. The psychopath wants money, he will do anything. He will steal, he will kill to obtain, but the goal is the same. Psychopaths are recognizable. They're like caricatures of human beings, but they are recognizable. You can understand what they're interested in, what they're looking for, what you know. Narcissists are not. Narcissists are so delusional, so detached, so divorced from reality that Otto Kernberg, the father of the field, suggested in the 70s that narcissism is a form of psychosis, that they are kind of schizophrenics, because they're no longer with us. They're somewhere in outer space. The only difference is that the psychopath tries to impose his fantasy on you and coerce you to confirm that it is real. So he tells you, this is it. I'm a genius, for example. And then you must say, yes, you're a genius, even if you think he's an idiot. You must say it. You must confirm the fantasy. And if you don't, you're penalized. He's very punitive and vindictive, the narcissist, very vengeful. So, but he's looking for a partner. He's looking for someone to tell him, you're normal. Your fantasy is reality. Your false self is not false. You say you're a genius, you are. You say you're drop dead gorgeous, you are. Everything you say about yourself is true. Don't worry about it. Don't fret. You're okay. You're mentally healthy. He needs this. He needs the normalcy affirmation from the partner. While the psychopath couldn't care less. Psychopath doesn't care what you think about him.
So if the person doesn't say that and doesn't go along with that, then what happens?
The narcissist becomes very aggressive. The aggression has two forms, basically. What we call internalized aggression, where the narcissist devalues you in his mind first in his mind, by the way. He changes the introject. He changes your representation in his mind. He begins to see you as an enemy. He converts you into something called persecutory object. So it's a form of aggression. Converts you into an enemy means he has to fight you, he has to punish you, and then he does. This becomes externalized aggression. That's the psychopathic element in narcissism. It becomes externalized and it begins to punish you verbally, sometimes physically, financially, legally. He could litigate you to death. There are many ways to punish you. So if you refuse to comply and obey and affirm and confirm the narcissist's impaired reality testing, and we have this today in politics, for example. We have very well-known figures who became presidents and prime ministers all over the world. They're narcissists. They live in fantasy. And they insist that everyone around them tells them it's not a fantasy. And if someone dares to confront this kind of person and say, wait a minute, maybe you're wrong. It's not real. It's not backed by evidence. Science says otherwise. The narcissist becomes rageful and fires that person or imprisons that person. So there is a penalty to pay if you refuse to become an integral part of the shared fantasy and conform to the narcissist's totally distorted perception of reality and crazy cognitions.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Investing in your mental health can feel like a big decision, but your peace of mind is just as essential as your physical well-being. Life brings challenges, from the anxiety of stress to navigating high conflict relationships, and you really shouldn't have to face them alone. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, but with BetterHelp, you could save up to 50% per session on average. For a flat weekly fee, you get consistent quality care right from wherever you are. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and over 5 million people that have been helped worldwide, BetterHelp makes it easy to find support that fits your life, and you can switch therapists anytime. Therapy isn't just for moments of crisis, it's for building boundaries, learning tools, and becoming the most empowered version of yourself. Your well-being is so worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/negotiate to get 10% off your first month. Visit betterhelp.com/negotiate. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/negotiate. And the same thing happens from, like, let's say it's a mother and it's from a son.
Of course.
Right.
Yes.
If the son confronts the mother and
Of
says,
course.
hey, that what you're saying is not true, then the mother
course.
will cut the son off.
Of course, we have a concept called pseudo-hostile and pseudo-mutual families. Pseudo families. It's a family, usually the head of the household is usually a narcissist, but not only, but usually a narcissist. And it is a family where the head of the household, who is a narcissist in many cases, says, our family is wonderful. Our family is perfect. The dynamics inside our family are beneficial to everyone. It's great to be a member of our family when the family sucks. And if you dare to confront this person and say, no, I don't feel good in this family. You're not a good parent. Things are not good here. The dynamics are, then of course you're penalized horribly in every possible way. You're disinherited, you're verbally abused, you're confined to your room for the next 60 years or something. The punishment is huge. So the fantasy in the case of a mother would be usually either a fantasy of a perfect family, a narcissistic mother, perfect family, or what we call the symbiotic bond. Like me and my son, we are one. We're a single organism. I can feel him. I can read him. I can guess ahead. I can anticipate everything he needs. I take care of all his needs. He cannot survive without me. I cannot survive without him. That's a symbiotic bond. And it's very infantile. This is the case when you're with a newborn. Yeah? But these are the ways that a narcissistic mother, in the example that you've given, would superimpose a shared fantasy on the family structure. And any deviation from the shared fantasy, any hint of agency, independence, personal autonomy, criticism, disagreement, having a life. Even if, as a son, for example, of such a mother, you have a life, you have your own friends, you found a girlfriend, you're about to get married, you have a new job, she would resent this because it threatens the stability of the fantasy. You're changing. Any change in you challenges the internal object that represents you in her mind. This kind of mother is demented. She's interacting not with you, but with your avatar in her mind. She's inside her mind. She's solipsistic. In her mind, there is this perfect son or perfect daughter. And this perfect son or perfect daughter, they're immobile. They're immutable. They're like ancient Egyptian mummies. And she continues to interact with these images, not with the real children. And suddenly, there is this image of the daughter, okay, and she's stable and she's fixed. It's a fixation. And suddenly, this daughter comes and says, Mom, I just met the man of my life, the love of my life. I'm going to get married. It's shocking because it destabilizes the ancient Egyptian mummy, destabilizes the avatar. And the mother has to punish her for the distress and discomfort and ego dystony that this creates in the mother. The mother wants her daughters and sons to be there forever, cobwebbed until she dies, because otherwise she feels challenged and it's very terrifying. It's like her whole internal world is falling apart. It's a pitiable condition. You know, I'm going to say something that's not popular. People say narcissist, evil, demonic, this, that. Yeah, they are. They have horrible impacts on people. I'm the guy who coined the phrase narcissistic abuse. I should know. Yeah. So I take credit and I don't feel inferior to anyone in this field. But bear in mind, the narcissist is a victim of narcissistic abuse in most cases. It's a victim. It's a victim who is chosen to adopt the abuser as a role model. It's a victim who said, I'm never going to be abused again. From now on, I'm going to abuse others. I'm going to be the abuser from now on. Okay, it's an immoral choice. And it's a horrible thing to do to people. But never forget, it's a victim. And it's a seriously damaged victim. The narcissist's mind, above all, is pitiable. I mean, it's a pitiable human being. It's a human being who cannot experience love, is never in touch with reality, lives inside a fantasy that can never come true. So he's constantly fighting to sustain it somehow. He's terrified. I wrote this morning that narcissism is a defense against shame and against the terror of experiencing this shame.
Yes.
And that's all there is to it. It's a terror. It's a state of terror. It's, oh my God, it's falling apart. I projected this image. I convinced everyone that I'm this or that, and it's all falling apart. And when it falls apart, I will feel so ashamed that I will die. I'm in terror because it's life-threatening. This is called narcissistic modification. So, you know, I understand the rage and the anger and the hatred but they should be pitied. They are so damaged. They're so damaged. That's why when I ask victims of narcissistic abuse, especially women, but not only, what in him attracted you? Not only women, to be clear, also men. What in him, as a romantic partner, as a friend, whatever, attracted you to him? Many of them say, he looked to me like a child. I felt like he's a child. So, because the narcissist is a child. And the narcissist leverages this, that he's a broken, damaged, crying, hurt child. And he is. He is. That's not a pretense. But he leverages this as a bait to lure you in, to trigger your maternal instincts, to render you protective. And then you can't let go, because what mother abandons her child? It's heartbreaking, you know? But it is a child, ultimately. They are 2, 3 years old mentally. They have great semantic memory. In other words, they can memorize all kinds of tasks and they have skills. They could be super educated. They could be, amazing in many other ways. But when it comes to their psychology, these are 2 years old, and 2 years old who've just undergone a horrible upbringing, one way or another.
So can they change?
Sorry? No,
And no.
they can't change. I know again that you can find online psychologists and therapists and psychiatrists who would tell you, of course, they can change. Just pay me, and I will show you, and so on and so forth. It is all self-serving. No one in academia, starting with Otto Kernberg down to Daniel Stern, and you name it, all the big names and so on, and the small names, even some Vaknin, no one believes, there's no evidence whatsoever that any treatment modality we know, any therapy we know, has any impact on narcissists, except sometimes, I would even say often, you can modify the narcissist behaviors in the short term. I will tell you something. When a narcissist goes to prison, all his narcissistic behaviors cease and desist. They all disappear. The contempt, the arrogance, the exploitation, the envy, the abuse, all vanishes as if it has never been. He becomes the nicest, kindest, most empathic, amazingly helpful person you've ever seen in your life. In prison. Because he's afraid.
Now, wouldn't it be, though, that they learn how to behave like a person who has empathy, but they don't actually have empathy?
I fully agree. It's a simulation. But we can leverage this simulation in therapy. In clinical settings, we can teach the narcissist or convince the narcissist or bargain with the narcissist to change his behaviors, the abrasive, antisocial, harmful, abusive, hurtful behaviors. We can change some of them because we give the narcissist some reason to incentive, or because he's afraid. He's afraid to lose you, for example. So he would change his behavior. He's afraid in prison to shorten his life expectancy dramatically. So he becomes a non-narcissist. Fear is a great motivator with narcissists. Grandiosity is a motivator. Narcissists are children, remember, they're 2 years old. So you can come to a narcissist as a therapist and you can say, I don't believe you can do that. I would have liked you to change your behavior, but I don't think you can do that. Not even you can do that. And he will do it to prove to you that he can do it. Just to prove to you that he is omnipotent, all-powerful, he will change his behavior. So many therapists leverage grandiosity. They challenge the narcissist to prove how perfect he is, and then he changes his behavior. Another reason the narcissist changes his behavior, he hits rock bottom, he experiences narcissistic modification, all his defenses crumble. This is called decompensation. He decompensates. He's defenseless. He becomes essentially a borderline. And then there's a window of opportunity and we can modify behaviors. But behavior modification in a narcissist is short-term. You need maintenance sessions. Like you change the narcissist's behavior. He promises, for example, he's married to you and he makes promises in therapy not to be verbally abusive anymore. Imagine. So he will go at it. He will persevere for 2 months, 3 months. On the 4th month, he will abuse you again. You want to make sure he never abuses you verbally again? He has to attend therapy, maintenance sessions every 2-3 months. It doesn't hold. It's not permanent. It's never permanent. Because the narcissistic dynamics are much stronger than any behavior modification. With the exception of behavior modification in the short term, all treatment modalities have zero, see, this is zero impact on narcissists. End of story, period. Anyone who claims otherwise is self-interested and a money grubber. So
now it is a spectrum, right? So there are people that have narcissistic traits or tendencies. So what about people who are kind of narcissistic, but not full-blown narcissism?
yes,
Are they
it's a very, very, I'm sorry?
What about those? Are they able to change more than
Yes.
others?
Okay, so we make a distinction between three types of narcissist, if you wish. First of all, the word narcissist should be reserved to someone who's been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder.
Right.
And this is 1 to 1.7% of the general population. Separately from narcissists, now, narcissists are mentally ill, severely mentally ill. They don't have a functioning self. They're unable to tell the difference between external and internal. They have a working fantasy that consumes them, so they lose touch with reality. This is a serious disease. This is almost psychosis, as Sternberg said. It's almost schizophrenic, you know. So these, luckily for humanity, there's only 1 to 1.7%. According to the DSM, 1.7%. Okay, separate from this and not connected to this, it's very misleading. There are people with narcissistic traits. People with narcissistic traits are not narcissists. So there's the confusion. You could have narcissistic traits, you can even exhibit narcissistic behaviors, but that doesn't make you a narcissist. What you have is what is known as narcissistic style. Len Sperry coined the phrase, psychologist, coined the phrase narcissistic style to describe people whose behavior and sometimes traits are such that they are socially problematic. So they're obnoxious, they're abrasive, they're envious, they're hypercritical, they're sometimes a bit abusive, their empathy level is reduced and so on. But internally, they're perfectly okay. They can tell the difference between reality and fantasy. They know definitely that you exist externally, not internally. They interact with you really out externally, not inside. Everything is different. They're not the same. It's not the same animal.
Mhm.
Now, people with narcissistic traits, we don't have a number. We don't know how many people. But there are guesses that 6 to 7% of the general population, and definitely the number is growing. No doubt about this. Multiple studies show, big studies show that the number of people with narcissistic style is growing year by year inexorably. There is a third category, much neglected, and it is known as subclinical narcissist. The subclinical narcissist is someone who does not possess the full-fledged disorder. So again, as a functioning self, etc. And yet, the level or the intensity of his narcissistic style is such that untrained laymen and even some trained clinicians can mistake this kind of person to be a narcissist, can think that he's a narcissist, misdiagnose him as a narcissist. So subclinical narcissists are also known as dark triad personalities. When you hear the phrase dark triad personality, it is someone who is a subclinical narcissist, not a narcissist. Also subclinical psychopath, not a psychopath, and also a Machiavellian, a manipulator. That's dark triad. Dark tetrad is someone who is all these things, but also is a sadistic. However, contrary to what you may hear online from self-styled experts, people with dark personalities are not narcissists. These are people who could not be diagnosed as narcissists and instead were given the diagnosis of dark triad or dark personality. They don't reach this level of internal disruption and destruction that a narcissist has.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with narcissism, if I may, one more comment. The problem with narcissism is that it's very misleading. Like when you come across a true blue narcissist, full-fledged, ribbons and all, the simulation of normalcy can be so convincing that you can be thrown off track, you can be thrown off the scent. Hervey Cleckley, who was an American psychologist in the 1940s, He wrote a brilliant masterpiece, and it's called The Mask of Sanity. He said that psychopaths, he called them psychopaths. He actually meant narcissists. There was no narcissist at that time. He called them psychopaths. He said that these people have a mask of sanity. They wear a mask that convinces you that they are totally normal and sane. Maybe a bit quirky, maybe a bit eccentric, but otherwise, like you and me. I mean, like you, not me. Normal, sane. But they're not. They're not. This is the false self. They have an externalized self, an exoskeleton, something. They have nothing inside. Inside, they're empty. This is called this empty schizoid core. Inside, there is emptiness. Emptiness, by the way, is not a metaphor. It's a diagnostic criterion in borderline personality disorder. There's nothing there. The narcissist is an absence masquerading as a presence. And he wears a disguise called the false self, which is essentially fantastic, grandiose, inflated self-concept. And he forces it on you, and he does it in a subtle way. And he's so great at simulating normal, healthy people.
Right.
So it's very, very misleading. But, and I promise to finish with this, but luckily you're equipped with a NADAR, narcissist radar. The narcissist radar is your gut instinct, your intuition.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that while your intuition is wrong 50% of the time, 50% of the time, when it comes to reality, like a flip of a coin, your intuition is wrong only 10% of the time when it comes to other people.
Yeah.
When you feel something's wrong, something off key, something awry, something not well put together, something doesn't fit, when you feel uncomfortable, when you have doubts, walk away. It's your intuition picking up on a narcissist. And don't involve your brain. Do not involve your brain or reasoning. Don't say, wait a minute, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why am I feeling like this? He's a great guy. You know, he's handsome, he's educated, he's erudite, he's rich, he's this, he's that. Why am I feeling uncomfortable? Something must be wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with you.
They always can tell you. There's always that feeling. There's always that gut.
Yes.
There's always the hair on the back of your neck. And there were always
Yes.
red flags.
Do you know it has a name in clinical psychology? It's called the Uncanny Valley reaction. The Uncanny Valley reaction. There was a Japanese roboticist in 1970. His name was Masahiro Mori. And Masahiro Mori said that when robots would become android, humanoid, when robots would become indistinguishable from people, the only way we would be able to tell that they are robots is because we would feel uncomfortable. He said there will come a time when robots will be completely indistinguishable from human beings. Are we in trouble? He said. No, we are not in trouble, because a voice inside us would tell us something's wrong with this guy or girl. You know, they're not, and you would know. He said, you would know. Trust this voice. And he called it the Uncanny Valley voice. So we call it the Uncanny Valley reaction. When you're in the presence of a narcissist or a psychopath, you're in the presence of a perfectly assembled robot that resembles a human being, but is not. And you have an Uncanny Valley reaction. So trust it.
Listen to that voice next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
For sure. Because they cannot change, and you can't change them.
No,
Can't
they're likely to change you, not the other way.
Yeah. And they will try to change you.
They will try and very often succeed. They will make you less empathic. Suddenly you will not recognize yourself. You'll become a lot more aggressive, a lot more abrasive. You may become even narcissistic or psychopathic in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
You will divorce yourself. You will lose your identity.
Of yourself.
Yes. And unrecognizable. We call this process in clinical psychology estrangement. Narcissist entrains you, he brainwashes you, and this causes estrangement.
Mm-hmm.
And you become a stranger to yourself.
If you're a renter, you have to hear this. We rack up points on groceries, travel, practically everything else. But rent, until recently, that was just money out the door, but not anymore. With Bill, paying rent finally pays off. There's no cost to join, and just by paying rent, you unlock flexible points that can be transferred to your favorite hotels, airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. When you pay rent through Built, you unlock two powerful benefits. First, you earn industry's most valuable points on rent every month, no matter where you live or who your landlord is. Your rent now works for you. Second, you gain access to your exclusive neighborhood benefits in your city. Built's neighborhood benefits are things like extra points on dining out, complimentary post-workout shakes, free mats or towels at your favorite fitness studios, and unique workout experiences that only Built members can access. And when you're ready to travel, Built points can be converted to your favorite miles and hotel points around the world, meaning your rent can literally take you places. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, what are you waiting for? Start paying rent through Built and take advantage of your neighborhood benefits by going to joinbuilt.com/negotiate. That's joinbilt.com/negotiate. Make sure to use our URL so that they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/negotiate to sign up for Built today. Why I teach you how to get out of these relationships. I teach you how to, turn that around and create leverage and get out of that relationship. So, and it's way harder to get out of than it is to get into. So.
Yeah. And now picking your brain, because, why do you think narcissistic abuse is a complex of behaviors, which is by today well-defined and easily recognized? Why is it not criminalized in any jurisdiction? There is coercive control in the United Kingdom and this kind of bullshit, but there's no criminalization of narcissistic abuse as a complex set of behaviors. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think because judges don't recognize it at this point yet. I mean, I think that they look for evidence, right? And because they haven't seen, okay, what are the factors? What they need to see is, here are the set of factors that define narcissistic abuse. And so what they need to see is somebody has to come forward and say, here is what defines narcissistic abuse. Somebody has to introduce that as a bill and bring it to the legislature and say, this is a defined set of factors that can be over and over something that a court can go, I can look at this and every single time know that I can look at the elements, and every single court can look at evidence for each set of elements. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've spoken to many lawyers in the last 28 years, and I know that many elements of narcissistic abuse are criminalized. So, for example, coercive control in the United Kingdom, I think also in Canada.
Yeah, I have seen that many courts are starting to do that, but I know that that's what they're going to want. They're going to want to
But not the whole package. What I'm trying to
uniformity.
say is that elements are criminalized, but not the cumulative package. Like,
Right. So, but they're going to want to be able to see uniformity across the board so that each element can be proven up, right?
I must say there is huge homogeneity. Go to any forum of victims.
Right.
The experiences replicate.
I agree with you. I mean, I think that it should be, but I know what they're going to want to see. So somebody's going to have to come forward and introduce it as a bill and say, here's how it can be.
Why someone like you doesn't initiate a campaign? I mean, you're uniquely positioned to do this.
Oh, well, maybe I should.
I think you should. I mean, you're the most prominent legal voice in the sphere.
Yeah, I am.
I can attest to this. Yeah. So you have kind of moral responsibility, if you wish. I mean, why not, I'm serious, why not start a campaign to criminalize narcissistic abuse? I think you will have enormous amounts of support. I mean, in all, even in academia, now we're beginning to have academic articles about narcissistic abuse with the phrase narcissistic abuse. I'm very gratified to see this. But even in academia, we admit, we accept, we acknowledge that narcissistic abuse is detrimental to the victim. For example, 12 years ago, there was a new discovery in neuroscience. in neuroscience, not related to. And they discovered something called entrainment. Entrainment is when the brain waves of two or more people are synchronized in a way that an EEG, an electroencephalograph, cannot tell the difference. So if you're connected to a machine and I'm connected to a machine and the machine registers our brain waves, they will be indistinguishable from one another. This is called entrainment. Now, how did they discover it? They registered the brain waves of participants in a rock band. And they discovered that when they start to play the music, all their brain waves synchronize. That was 12 years ago. Now we know that all sounds do this. Sounds do this. If you and I were to start to listen to a specific song right now, within less than 5 minutes, fewer than 5 minutes, our brain waves would be largely synchronized. And there would be no way to tell which is which.
Wow.
So sound has this impact. And I suggested a few years ago, 7 years ago or something, that verbal abuse is a sound system. The narcissist tends to repeat the same slides. It's like a mantra,
Yeah.
And I think the
It
narcissist
is like being
entrains
a
him.
cult. Oh, for sure. I mean,
There is entrainment here.
for sure.
So this is an example of how academia is beginning to accept that in narcissistic abuse situations, there are components which are objectively measurable. For example, brainwaves. Can you believe it? No one has taken a narcissist and his victim or spouse or whatever and measured their brainwaves.
Well, it would have to be on a statewide level, so it would have to be per state.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Yeah, it would have to be per state. It wouldn't be federal. Because
Wouldn't be federal?
No. It would in the United States, it's per state.
So we'd have to start in California, I guess.
Yeah.
Easiest target.
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I
And
really encourage
the way the United States is going right now, I mean, there's already like rumblings of issues in divorce law because of the current political.
I read about it.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, you have to go blue, but I really encourage you to do this. I think that no one is more uniquely positioned than you to do this, and leverage your
Nobody's
reputation.
ever actually approached me about that before, other than, this is the first conversation I've ever had with somebody about that.
I think if you embark on a campaign, and forget the visibility and all the attendant benefits. I mean, that's besides the point. But if you embark on a campaign, I think you're uniquely positioned. I mean, there are many
having conversations with people like you. Get out of my little bubble over here.
Yeah. Here's something you can do which would definitely make a difference. I mean, a big difference. Victims are suffering, and when they're trying to break down their abuse into components, he coerced me, he verbally abused me.
Yeah.
In some countries, I don't know the United States, but the conviction rate for rape is like 0.3%, or I don't know what. That's rape. That's an ostensibly objective. When victims of narcissistic abuse try to discuss narcissistic abuse with legal authorities, the police, law enforcement, they're laughed out of the room because even rape is difficult to prosecute. I mean, let alone ephemeral notions of he verbally abused me, But we're not talking about he verbally abused me. We are talking about a campaign, orchestrated campaign, to use words in order to affect your mind, alter it, take over it. It's very different qualitatively. And this is only one component in dozens of components, which comprise together the picture of narcissistic abuse. Some of these components can be objectively proven. Some of them cannot. Some of them is he said, she said, but many of them can be objectively proven. And someone has to put the package together and say, if there's anyone who engages in this behavior in a systematic way, then, it should not be legal. It should be criminal.
Well, my daughter interned for Governor Newsom for 2 semesters last year, so an interesting.
I'm sorry, you interned for Governor Newsom?
My daughter did.
Your daughter? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. So that would be an interesting conversation.
Bear that in mind. I think I think your whole career may have led exactly to this, in my view. I mean, you combine law and the topic. So I think your whole career may have led to this, in my view. Someone has to do that.
Interesting.
Someone has to do that. I was involved with the coercive control campaign in Scotland and in England.
You were.
I was involved. Yes, there's an interview online with the initiators of the campaign and so on. I was involved with this. I gave them the kind of academic background, if you wish, and so on. And they were far less qualified than you. They were kids, basically, and they made it. It's an offense. In the United Kingdom, coercive control is a serious offense. I mean, like 5 years, 10 years in prison, something.
That's
It's a
good.
serious offense. Sorry?
It's amazing. That's fantastic. I love that.
Not only there, I think Canada adopted the same law. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Australia, I think. So it's spreading. Coercive control is a bad thing. Coercive control is when you essentially kidnap someone. You take away their identification cards and whatever, passports or whatever. You leave them without money, no access to any communication, means of communication, and so on. So it's essentially kidnapping. So it's more objective. It's like easier to prove. But narcissistic abuse is much wider. So I don't know. I know I'm not a lawyer, but I think if you prove, you don't have to prove like all the elements of narcissistic abuse. It's enough if you prove a preponderance, like a preponderance of elements, and then it sticks. I think something like that. Maybe civil, maybe not only criminal, but something civil as well. But it can't go unpunished. It's a very common form of abuse nowadays. I mean, go online. I don't need to tell you, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. It's not a joke.
Oh, I'm aware. Yeah, I know.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting. I'm glad we had this conversation, especially knowing that they know what they're doing, and they can't change.
They cannot change. It's not that they cannot change. They don't have incentive to change. They don't want to change.
Right.
I told you that in prison they do change. They have a great incentive, a knife in the
Yeah,
back.
but again, they can change their behavior.
Yes, but they cannot change internally. Yes.
Right.
So
Right. It's not the same.
it's a compulsion. You're right in this. It's a compulsion in the sense that there's something happening inside that forces them to misbehave. It's not a clear-cut case. The mens rea, if you wish, is not it's like a psychopath. Psychopath premeditates, plans, has a
Right.
goal. It's not the same. Here we have a delusion combined with a compulsion. It's a sick person, and
Right.
there is a drive, an urge from inside, an impulse that pushes the narcissist to
Right.
behave the way he does.
Yeah.
However, given the right incentives, like fear, the narcissist can change, definitely.
Yeah. It's not an internal change.
Not internal, but behaviorally, the narcissist can change.
Yes. Yeah.
Limited, of course, when the narcissist leaves prison, he reverts. He goes back to being a
Right.
narcissist. No.
Yeah. Right. So this has been a fascinating conversation. It always
Thank you.
is. Always
Thank you for
is.
having me.
And and I love that we went into sort of the political end of things too, because I think that that's there's always so much more. We always leave more that I think that we could get into a whole other level of conversation at some point, like the organizational end of things, right? Where could we go next as far as is there an incentive to be a narcissist? Right.
In current civilization, of course, there are
Right.
huge incentives to be a narcissist, and very few incentives, I would say disincentives to not be a narcissist. If you're not pushy, if you're not ambitious, if you're not competitive, if you're not disempathic, lacking in empathy, if you're not aggressive, if you're not, you're doomed in
What's the
today's.
impact? What's the impact of that long term?
Well, you see
What
what's happening around
leaves
you.
that
It's
for
a
another
dog.
conversation?
Yeah, it's a jungle, law of the jungle. It's a dog eat dog. It's might is right. I mean, you see it around you. I don't need to tell you.
It's a Darwinism conversation, I think, in some ways. And then, and then how do we navigate that from a negotiation communication point of view? And that's what what I'm training on right now.
I would generalize what you've just said. How to not become prey. As more and more people
Right,
become predators,
right.
as being predator is the bon ton, and
That
everyone wants to
that's
be a
what I'm
predator.
training on, right?
How
So
not, how to not become prey?
that kind of leave that for part three of the
Okay, my
conversation.
pleasure. Okay, take care.
As always, so fascinating, Sam.
Thank you. It's been a great conversation. I agree.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take
Thank you.
care. Take
Thank
care.
you. I appreciate you so
Okay.
much. And I know
Have
all
a
of you out there in our podcast land will absolutely love this. And we leave this for our next conversation. So thank you, Sam
thank you.
Vaknin. And
Have a narcissist-free day, weekend.
yes, all right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.